everybody, and welcome to another episode of Save vs. Death, the show where we play old, busted RPG systems that are very unforgiving, very idiosyncratic, and mostly forgotten. I am your GM, Rutskarn. With me today are our victims, Josh and Campster.
Hello.
It's a privilege to have Campster on the show today because his good RPG experience is minimal. And he's never been on this show, and I don't think he's ever even seen the show before. Is that right, Campster?
I have seen it in my YouTube recommendations.
That's almost as good. In fact, in some ways, it's better.
He's our extra virgin victim oil.
Alright, so the way the show generally works, we've got a few episodes, is I offer the players a few code words. And they don't know what these code words mean, but they have to pick one based on whether, they just like the sound of it. And that corresponds to a system that I've learned in the intervening time. And we're going to mix things up a little bit today. Instead of offering them the code words, I actually offered the, spoiler warning, Discord the code words. I gave them 3 emojis and had them choose which one they wanted me to run. And the emojis were snake, plane, and radio. Overwhelmingly, people chose snake. Now, would you guys like to guess what snake is?
What sort of D&D 1 module based entirely around the snake scene in Raiders of the Lost Ark.
You're close.
Is it an RPG system based around the 1990s film Anaconda?
You're also close.
Is it just Tomb of Horrors?
You're also close, in a weird way. I'm just going to give it to you. We are, in fact, playing The Adventures of Indiana Jones role-playing game developed by TSR in 1984. Oh, yes. The official, licensed Indiana Jones role-playing game.
Wait, hold on. So, there's a role-playing game. Is it based around the idea that you role-play as Indiana Jones and friends?
I was going to save that as a surprise for later, but actually, yes, Chris. You would think that it was a game for creating your own Indiana Jones adventures, but this game has no character creation. It only allows you to play pre-made characters based on the principal characters of the Indiana Jones film trilogy. In fact, know what characters are. Not even trilogy, I don't think? Because it's... Okay, hang on a second.
1984, you said?
Yeah, that's before. That is definitely before Last Crusade.
Yeah, which means it's based solely on the original Indiana Jones and Indiana Jones Temple of Doom. And this is a full-fledged role-playing game, and it is developed by TSR, the makers of Dungeons & Dragons.
What part of 1984 did it come out in? Because Temple of Doom was May 1984.
It launches with Temple of Doom components, so I'm guessing that it was made to launch more or less alongside. Yeah, exactly. It does have emblazoned on the front in sort of a pulp font from the producers of Dungeons & Dragons game. It says that, from the producers of Dungeons & Dragons game. Okay.
There was only one at the time.
Yeah, and also, it's interesting they say producers. Now, I really wish I had either a little more time to research or, maybe had a little more information about who developed the rule system. Without getting too much into minutia, which we may touch on some of it later. This game is actually, it resembles a lot of other systems that TSR produced in the 1980s, from 1980 onwards, which were designed to simulate kind of more modern adventures. TSR really did try to break out in the 80s into doing games that would work for a diversity of genres besides heroic fantasy, and nothing really worked that well. Almost none of them are remembered, even by RPG stalwarts.
That's kind of sad. Are they lost to time, or are they just not discussed much?
They're certainly not available for sale anymore. They are, generally speaking, available only as sketchy PDFs or as eBay pickups, or you can find one maybe in a used bookstore somewhere. And also, yes, they're not discussed, they're not mentioned, they're not referenced. They're not, certainly no modern design stems from them. Their lessons were pretty much forgotten and were never really developed from, even at the time. Which, case in point, I've actually noted in my survey of these systems that several of them have really cool common sense, rules, streamlines, and simplifications that are completely discarded in the next edition, which has a bunch of other, like, seemingly from first principles innovations, which are, again, discarded in the next game. Indiana Jones, in particular, in some ways, it's a pastiche of all... Like, it bears resemblances to all of the other modern systems that were developed around the time, and yet I would say it's slightly worse than all of them.
Well, that's encouraging.
Here's kind of just a general overview of what was happening with TSR around the time. So, as you all know, Dungeons & Dragons uses the D20 as its primary die, which is you roll a number between 1 and 20, and that determines whether you hit somebody in a combat. And most other times, you either need to roll damage, or you don't need to really roll anything at all, the exception being, like, if you're rolling a proficiency check, which basically uses your stats, you roll the D20 and try to get under your stat with modifications. Or, and this is kind of the interesting part, if you're like a thief, you have skills which are based on percentiles. So you roll 2 dice, which are meant to represent numbers between 1 and 100, and you try to get under a percentile value. Now, I guess TSR decided that's a nice broad range of values. Like, that represents sort of a large range of skill levels and of proficiencies. That seems like the way for the future. Like, to wargamers, that really seemed like that's the way forward. You know, this kind of minute, precise simulation. You have a stat that's between 1 and 100, and you roll percentiles and try to get under it, and certain things modify above or below. And you see that in a lot of games ranging from, I would say, roughly about 1975 to the late 80s, and that was a complete dead end.
How wrong they turned out to be. That sounds so ridiculous to us now.
Yeah, because, I mean, there's a few problems with it for design laymen. One of the main ones is that it's not actually that granular probability space, because generally speaking, like, things are going to modify the difficulty above or below, but, like, it's almost too much numbers to deal with, where, like, if you have, like, a minus 20 for something, then that means that, like, either you're still failing a lot of the time for somebody who's incredibly skilled so that they otherwise never fail, or else, like, they're actually failing a decent amount of the time, but they just fail less frequently than other people. It's too messy to adjust the difficulty of a discrete task to suit the giant stat. Plus, rolling percentile dice is just ugly. It's, like, kind of a clunky, cumbersome, chart consulting way to run a system, and it doesn't provide a wide range of granular, accessible results. But anyway, this game is almost entirely based on D10s. In fact, I think it only uses D10s. Mostly you're just rolling percentiles. Well, as for the actual adventure we're going to play today, now there is a pre-made adventure that comes with the main rules document, and there were a variety of other published adventures which I have not actually seen or laid eyes on at all. The only problem is that the adventure in the book is for one player playing Indiana Jones.
Wait.
And it's also...
It's for one player and no DM? Like, it's
no, it's
like
for
a
DM and
player...
one player. It's for 2 people.
That's really
still weird.
Although, actually, I say that, it's structured so that it can be played just by the person reading it. Like, it's very choose-your-own-adventure novel. In fact, it's a lot like a lone wolf novel, if you've ever read any of those choose-your-own-adventure RPG light books. Like, it's like you roll your skill. If you succeed, this happens. If you fail, that happens. Then this happens. You roll again. If that happened, you have a minus 10. If that happened, you have a plus 10. It's kind of sticky, but I guess I could actually... I think it's a decent way to teach the game, so I'll give it a pass.
So that's the only adventure module, or are all the adventure modules just one person playing Indiana Jones?
Oh, that's the only adventure. That's the adventure that came with the book. There were other.
I assume there were
modules
no
supplementary
published, which I assume materials.
Yeah, no, not with the main book. I mean, I know that there were other releases for this game. Actually, it apparently sold well enough that they published other materials for it. It just not well enough to actually like make a dent in the public consciousness or steer them to make any other really licensed games, except, okay, you know what? TSR made like one other licensed game that I can remember. You guys want to guess? Just take a wild stab what it was.
Star Wars.
No,
Star Wars' first RPG was like West End Games.
Yeah, it was that was also kind of a developmental dead end.
Breakfast Club.
I'm just gonna give it to you. It was Buck Rogers.
Oh man, why aren't we playing that one, Rutskarn?
Because it sucks.
Oh, as
Also,
opposed to this one.
Also, I believe, okay, so yeah, Buck Rogers was created in 1982, and then the game came out that decade, but kind of late that decade. I don't know. I remember like seeing for some reason the RPG club I was president of had two boxed copies of Buck Rogers versus the Han, and it turns out that both of them are expansions to the main game that are worthless by themselves. So.
So how are we going to resolve this whole we've got too many people for this game problem?
Oh, it's not a problem. I'll just improvise an adventure.
Okay.
Yeah, so I did a little bit of research, by which I mean I looked at one web page, and it turns out there was an Indiana Jones movie that was in discussion for a while, but never actually really got developed, where Indiana Jones and crew would go to a Scottish castle that was haunted. So I'm just going to take that and run with it. We'll see where it goes. Oh, but first I need to assign you your characters.
Never came out.
Aw, assign.
Yeah. Well, actually, I'm just curious. Who would you guys pick?
Well, I was under the hopeful impression that this would include Last Crusade, so I could play Brody, but I'll take Sala.
Uh-huh. And Josh?
And we also can't play Henry. That was his name, right? I can't remember now.
Yeah, his dad. Yeah.
Yeah.
Also,
actually running through the. Wait, was Brody not in?
He was. I was going to say
Ark?
he was in Raiders, but the problem is Brody in the original stayed at the museum. He didn't become an adventurer and go out.
Right,
until
Brody's
Last Crusade.
not one of the characters that's available in this materials. I can just give you the full list. I think I am just going to let you play whoever you want to. I was going to assign you, if there's going to be three people, basically I was going to assign it so that Josh would end up with the lounge singer, Willie Scott. Chris would end up with everybody's favorite Indiana Jones love interest, Willie Scott. And then Jacob would end up with the villain of Temple of Doom, Wilhelmina Willie Scott. And then the premise would be that there'd be an amulet that clones people. But
I mean, I do think that it is vitally important that none of us play as Indiana Jones in this Indiana Jones role-playing game.
Oh, we are in accord. But under the circumstances with just the two of you, I think it'd be interesting to show off a diversity of characters. So, Chris, congratulations, you're Sala.
Yay!
I mean, I was going to say my choice was Short Round, but Short Round is a really problematic character for a lot of reasons. It's
I was actually going to specifically veto Short Round, but you seem to have gotten there independently.
Yeah.
I actually went from an initial reaction of, oh man, I'll make everybody play Short Round, to wait, no, that's a terrible idea.
No. So what is the full character list?
Okay, the full character list. Let's see here. Let me just scroll down because I got the all right. I mean, let me flip the pages in this copy of the book that I have that I purchased legally in 1984.
10 years before you were born.
Naturally. So your choices are, of course, Indiana Jones, Sala,
which is not a choice.
Marion Ravenwood, Short Round, Willie Scott, Wu Han. Who is the waiter from the beginning of Temple of Doom. Yeah, but he does die, but he was also Indiana Jones's companion, and the game can take place in any period in 1930. So this makes sense because it's established that they've had adventures together. So that actually makes a lot of sense.
No, I know it does. It bugs me.
Yeah,
because it can take place at any time in the 1930s, but then Short Round would be less old than he is in the Temple of Doom.
Okay, we're gonna make it a short game. You guys got 3 guesses to guess who the last playable character is. I'll give you a hint. He's in Raiders of the Lost Ark only.
Is he a Nazi?
Belloc.
Nope. I'll give you another hint. He's not a villain. There's no villains playable in this game.
Darn.
The captain of the ship?
Nope. Although that would be
the
good
monkey.
One, actually. Nope. The monkey's a Nazi, Josh.
Yeah, the monkey is a Nazi, Josh. The monkey literally gives a Nazi salute. The monkey is a Nazi. I'm trying to think of friendly characters in Raiders that. There's the captain of the ship. There's Marcus, but we've established he's not in it.
CIA guy from the beginning or something.
You mean the handlers that come in to explain to have the
top
no,
men.
It's not none of them. Neither of them.
It's actually been a long time since I've seen the Indiana Jones films, and I'm like,
is it Marion's dad? Is it Dr. Ravenwood?
No, okay, no. I'm just gonna tell you guys. It's the pilot, Jock Lindsay.
Oh yeah, he's got a bar now. He retired to Orlando.
Yeah.
There's a bar at Disneyland called Jock Lindsay's, and it's got Indiana Jones.
I guess I will pick Marion because I don't remember any of the fucking Temple of Doom characters aside from that Willie Scott was annoying.
Okay, I'll just go ahead and tell you that Marion has one of the highest stats in the game. Unfortunately,
it's her appeal. Stat that's one of the highest in the game. Oh
yeah,
It's what?
It's appeal.
Charisma / attractiveness.
Oh, okay, of course.
Yeah, it's a 92.
Naturally.
And Willie Scott's actually also has a 92 in appeal, and they both share the highest stat in the game. So canonically, Marion Ravenwood could have had her own lounge act. Okay, so I'm going to outline your character choices, and extremely conveniently for me, both of your characters are on the same page of the rulebook.
Okay.
Okay, so Sala. Sala is a digger for hire. Cairo is his home. That's your backstory.
I knew that from the movie.
So once again, these stats are out of 100. And essentially, when you roll 2d10, when you roll percentile, you want to roll at or under your stats, so higher is better. So strength, you have a strength of 88, nice. A movement of 52, so movement is any kind of acrobatics. A prowess of 60, that's fighting. A backbone of 76. An instinct of 68, and an appeal of 72. Backbone is courage. Yeah, backbone is courage. Instinct is danger sense. You start out with a knife, $50. You know how to drive and survey dig sites, and you speak Arabic, English, and German.
Cool.
All right, Josh, you play Marion Ravenwood. Marion is currently between jobs. That's her backstory.
I love the depth
she owns
of these
a bar.
Characters.
Yep.
Is this after the bar got
not anymore?
burned
The
down?
Nazis burned it down.
So wait, this all takes place between Temple of Doom and Raiders?
There's no canonical timeline. It's very silly. You're right. So your strength is 52, your movement is 64, your prowess is 56, your backbone is 80, so you're much more courageous. Well, you're slightly more courageous, I suppose. Your instinct is 60, and your appeal is 92. It must be said your character is overall worse than Sala. But you are more agile, slightly more courageous, and you have more people skills. You have no weapons and no money.
Excellent.
But you know how to drive, how to pick locks, and how to pick pockets. Which is interesting because I don't know that was ever I guess she used sleight of hand to get the knife.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and you speak English and Nepalese.
So, as this is set in Scotland, those are very useful.
Yes.
All these other foreign languages. Does anybody have a crash course on Scots? So we can, I don't know, maybe the ghosts speak Scots?
I actually am reasonably well acquainted with Scots, but I'm going to spare everybody my actually attempting it. I think that, I think that really just spells doom for everybody concerned. Oh well, alright, so the two of you apparently are touring a castle in Scotland. Presumably you're on vacation after the exciting adventure you had in the dig sites of Raiders of the Lost Ark.
That sounds right. Marion and Sala go on vacation together alone.
I ship it. So, you're in a tour. You're in a group of touring tourists. For the most part, it's Americans, kind of crass in their seersucker outfits, walking along, chewing peanuts, pointing at paintings, and going, "Golly!" The tour guide is is an emaciated Scotsman with a extremely clipped accent, which is to your ears, more or less implaceable. Doesn't sound like broadly Scottish or broadly English, but somewhere in between. He goes through and dryly relates the histories of various persons of interest, but nobody's really listening to him because, for the most part, it's just like the family history. By the way, you were in Castle Lindsay.
I'm just wondering how all these kids in the middle of the Great Depression are in this freaking Irish vacation, Scottish vacation. Sorry.
Rich kids. I mean...
No, rich assholes remain rich assholes. You've just reached the top landing of the castle, when finally the ears of the group begin to perk up as, with some obvious reluctance, the butler begins to elucidate the hauntings of Castle Lindsay. In 1741, Gregory Lindsay, the lord of Castle Lindsay, went mad at dinner one evening. He began berating his servants for attempting to poison him, this despite the fact that later an investigation by the Crown determined that there was no poison used, or nothing present in his dishes that was untoward. This despite the fact that he was not said to have any enemies. After striking several servants and locking himself in his chambers, refusing to exit for any reason, he began to push pages out from under the door. Pages in an elaborate document accusing the whole realm of conspiring against him. He died of a terrible fever, saying that even his own family, who had been trying to talk him out through the door, was poised against him. Now, it said, he roams the castle, plaguing his descendants. It's for this reason that his descendants ultimately moved from the castle, leaving it as a destination for tourists and for the preservation of various historical societies. However, be cautious. Guests sometimes notice unusual events. Alright, so he, having wrapped up what you gather is a well-rehearsed, if not especially well-liked speech, he passes through the hallway into a gallery which is made up to look like a medieval dining hall. Or not medieval per se, but honestly kind of a mishmash of centuries. There are several like tacky mannequins. One of them attempting to, probably supposed to be Gregory Lindsay. A few attempting to be like his servants and family, all beckoning to him as he stands, raising up his goblet. Alright, at this point, I'm going to roll Instinct for the two of you.
Oh dear. Does Sala have a higher instinct than me?
He does, by a slight margin.
That seems like some level of bullshit, especially with how he acquitted himself in the third film.
Yeah. If Instinct was a stat for discovering mounts... Oh, no, that was Last Crusade, that's right. So, interesting. Tracy Hickman got a special thanks.
This is why they got rid of these systems. It's because Rutskarn is spending all this time looking at this chart.
No, I'm actually not. I'm just trying to find your character sheets again. This is my... This would be trivially easy if I actually had them printed out even. Or photocopied. Alright, so, Chris, you rolled a 75 over your instinct of 68, meaning you detect nothing.
Okay.
Josh, you roll a 28 under your instinct of 60, meaning you do detect something. So as you walk, you note something amiss within the room. A chill that runs down your spine.
That's it?
Actually, yes, because you didn't roll that... Well, no, actually, hold on. Yes, no, you do actually detect something. You detect not only the nature, basically, or that something is wrong, but you detect the direction. As you walk, you note that the mannequin's head angles slightly towards the group. His chipped, plastic blue eyes seem focused almost on you.
That's creepy.
Damn, Saul, is it cold in here?
I don't notice anything.
It's just... You see that mannequin over there? It feels like it's looking at me.
I mean, I guess. Do you want me to punch the mannequin?
Rise Davies impression there.
I don't know how to do it. I'm not Scottish, and I'm not from Cairo. I cannot do this.
That's perfectly fine. All right, the tour guide has materialized behind you and leans in. His cold eyes peer at you, Marion. What did you just say?
It's nothing. It's just... It's like that mannequin was looking at me.
He withdraws like a cat that's just been sneezed at. Looking at you? You had that particular sense, did you? His eyes flicker to the mannequin, noting that the angle of its chin is slightly different than it was before. The blood drains from his already more or less bloodless face.
I suppose.
Well, that concludes today's tour, he stammers. One of the tourists said, but I wanted to see the torture room. He's like, that's enough of that. You're all blessed to even be here, standing where their great men once stood. Americans, be gone! All of you, be gone! He suddenly shouts, waving his hand upwards. And I'm going to go ahead and roll again. All right, neither of you rolled under your instinct, so neither of you detect that anything is amiss as the tour group is beginning to be shooed from the chamber.
At this point, I just like to picture Salah's wearing like the hat, the Castle Lindsay hat, and a little Castle Lindsay like popcorn bucket, and is just not noticing anything wrong at all.
That was
going
strange,
out,
Salah.
exiting to the Castle
Wanna go to a
Lindsay
bar?
gift shop.
It's like a 90s gift shop in this 30s castle.
So you guys go to a bar afterwards?
I guess. Yeah. I don't know the exact context of this vacation here.
All right.
But
Apparently,
I guess
Salah's
it's my
buying
treat
because
since you have no money.
since he's got $50 American. You guys take American dollars here in Scotland, right? I'm a British
why
accent.
does Salah have American dollars anyway?
Cairo. I don't fucking know.
I'm a Welsh Egyptian guy who spent some time in the States, okay? It's not that weird.
As you're languishing in the bar, after a few moments, a thin man with a foppish haircut and an exceptionally well-tailored suit approaches and lays a few fingers on your shoulder. Salah. Excuse me. I understand it was the two of you who witnessed something unusual within the castle?
That was really more her. I didn't notice anything.
Well, I mean, it wasn't all that unusual. It's just it seemed like when mannequins turned to look at me.
Well,
I'm sure it was
not
nothing.
typical hereabouts. I'm sure in America with your sideshows and your clockwork devices, that it is nothing at all for a mannequin to turn its head on a boulevard to ogle a passerby or admire a small dog, but here in Scotland it is actually fairly rare. I say this, of course, not having spent much time in Scotland myself, having been educated within England. I'm sorry, allow me to introduce myself. I am Winston Lindsay, and I am, currently, the owner of Lindsay Castle.
Okay. Nice to meet you, Mr. Lindsay. What are you doing here?
Well, might I be candid with you? He takes a seat in the bar and orders around for each of you.
Well, I suppose if that's how you want to do it.
I am not much in connection with my ancestral home. I always found it dreary and unsettling living there as a child. I was rather happy when we vacated the place and spread out, as it were. However, the butler, who does remain there within the quarters, he was told me, gained something of a rapport with what he sees to be malicious forces there. Now, I'm not sure how much stock I put into it, but he says that for some reason the spirits within the castle have taken an interest in, I suppose it would be you, Miss.
Oh, you actually believe the castle is haunted?
Ravenwood. Her name's Ravenwood.
Well, I wouldn't say that I believe the castle is haunted, but, well, I'm hardly going to find a replacement butler, and if he's acquired an odd superstition, then I suppose I must humor him, mustn't I?
So what exactly are you saying, sir?
Well, I'm saying that he would be very obliged if you would. Oh, I feel terribly foolish proposing this, but if you would take up residence within the master bedroom, and one of the guest bedrooms, of course, for one evening.
To prove what?
Well, not to prove anything per se. Apparently, again, this sounds very foolish. I apologize. He's under the impression that the two of you have some sort of connection with the spirit within, or at least that the spirit believes there is some sort of connection, and that if you stay overnight, he will be satisfied that you are not, for example, a descendant of the Lindsays, or that you are in no other way there to harm him, and will calm himself. The butler instructed me that when the spirit is not quelled, there are... Again, I don't know what to make of this, but he says that accidents tend to happen.
Is there money involved?
Oh, of course, yes. I do it. He pulls out his billfold and gives a quizzical, embarrassed look. £500 apiece be suitable?
Yes, let's do it.
Well, you jumped on that quick.
Says the person with no money. I'm paying your bar tab.
All right, we'll do it. I'll stay in your castle and for a night, if it will assuage your butler.
I will, of course, provide accommodations immediately. You'll find it quite comfortable. There are many modern conveniences there for the sake of what staff we do retain.
Is there indoor plumbing? I mean, it's a castle.
Well, there is, it's provided for, as it were. Plumbing is perhaps a strong word, but suffice it to say you will not stew.
That's really not great imagery, but okay, I'll don't use that word ever again.
So, skipping ahead a little bit, you're brought to the castle. It's somewhat spookier without all the tourists journeying about. The lights are kept to a dimmer level, and there is, in fact, electricity running through the castle by way of kind of an antiquated system, which was installed within living memory. Barely installed within living memory. But there are also some kerosene lights, which give additional illumination, allowing the servants to finish their chores. Despite what you were told by the senior Lindsay, there's not a lot of servants that actually stay overnight. Many appear to be departing, and quite happy to be departing, giving you only the minimum of pleasantries before exiting directly through the gift shop. The butler regards you both sternly and says, Well, don't let me detain you any longer. He gestures elaborately with a bony hand to the grand staircase. You will find your room doors unlocked.
I turn to Sala. So, who gets the grand bedroom?
I'll take the guest bedroom.
All right.
You go up the stairs.
You go up the stairs, and as you open the doors to your bedrooms, the lantern in the hallway blows out, leaving you both shrouded in darkness.
I call out to Marion.
This damn old school lighting systems. I messed up my line there.
Marion, you hear footsteps climbing the staircase. Heavy footsteps, clanking.
Sala, is that you?
No, but I get the sense that we're in a Scooby-Doo mystery.
I do too. It's very Scooby-Doo, isn't it? I wasn't going to bring it up.
Scooby-Doo is just the name of a prankster asshole you both know back in the States.
Well, come on, let's go follow it.
First, we need to be able to see. I'm standing at my door, and all I have is $37 and a knife.
There are like candles around, or
I'll say that you saw where there was a lantern last, so you could attempt to relight it.
Sure, I do so.
Okay, you move to relight the lamp, and as the light strikes, and the kerosene takes hold of your meager matchlit flame, directly ahead of you, standing in the midst of the hallway, is a suit of armor with a visor up and a skull beyond it. In its hands is a rusty broadsword, which it swings like a woodsman's axe, ungainly, clumsily, directly at you, Marion. Now, we have begun the combat. Here's what we do. Both of you tell me what you want to do this round, and then you tell me when you want to do it. Unlike most games, which have an initiative system that determines objectively who goes first, how this game works is player characters decide who goes first, and if they roll, if they're up against an arch villain, maybe the villain can try to go first before them, but mooks always go last otherwise.
Well, it's attacking me right now, so immediately dodge out of the way.
Okay, my headphones just blinked out. Josh, did you declare an action?
I said I dive out of the way.
Damn it, my headphones are still blinked out.
Oh, Jesus.
The Scooby-Doo mystery is taking hold in real life!
Okay, try again.
Hello?
There we go, finally. Alright. Josh, action.
I dive out of the way since he's attacking me.
Okay, yeah, but dodging is more or less presumed. Do you have a retaliation?
Okay.
Throw the lamp at it. Burn it.
Would that even... How much kerosene is in the lamp?
Enough to burn a skeleton.
Yeah, I'll treat it as a weapon.
I dodge to the side and bash it over the head with the lamp.
Sounds good. Chris, what do you do?
How close am I to the skeleton?
You can be very close, or you could be not close. It's up to you.
This is a very soft RPG system.
Your spatial location is up for debate.
It is a little bit. There is objective movement systems, but the game also encourages you to play a little fast and loose sometimes.
Given that it may or may not be about to be on fire, I'm going to prefer that Sala be a little bit far away and is making steps towards the skeleton armor man, but is not quite there yet when Josh hits it with the lamp.
Okay, so you're just adjusting your position.
Yes.
Okay, in that case, we are now going to engage with this game's brawling system. Okay, so first I make a prowess check. It tells me if your character hits, and also how hard you hit. So, Josh, you have a pretty low prowess.
Right, because Marion
let's
never
see.
won any fights with bottles or other glass implements.
Or fire.
Or fire, for that matter.
Fake news. Alright, so Marion rolls her prowess on a 1d100. Alright, 54. That is under your prowess, meaning you succeed at hitting the armored skeleton with the lantern. And now I determine the damage you do. Now, I actually roll a different kind of damage depending on whether this is like a slashing or stabbing weapon or whether it's a blunt weapon. Because if it's a stabbing weapon, it deals possibly lethal damage the same way like a gun would. If it's a blunt weapon, it's basically just treated like a kind of punching.
I actually like that as far as Indiana Jones mechanics go. That makes a lot of sense. Kind of screws us
Yeah.
over
It really
here,
does.
but
I mean, if I
Right.
break the lantern, then it becomes a stabby weapon.
It's true.
then we're in the dark.
Alright, now actually also I said you hit it over the head with the lantern, but that has yet to be determined. This game determines the location you hit somebody and also how badly you hit them. And this is somewhat random. You know what? This sounds like the kind of fun times that we have in this kind of system, so I'm just going to go ahead and read you off the part where it tells you how to determine what kind of damage you deal.
Oh boy.
So, refer to the number that you rolled for the prowess check. Then go to the modified check table on the back of the booklet and find the row that coincides with that number. Find the column that coincides with the level of your character's attribute ratings at the time of the prowess check. Cross-reference the appropriate row and column to find a color square on the table. Go to the check result table and find the column that applies to the type of check you made. Find your color square from the modified check table in that column. That just tells you how much of a wound you deal.
Wasn't this supposed to be like an easier game to do?
Yes, it was supposed to. Fortunately for me, it's actually not that bad. Because I've played a lot of dumbass systems like this, so I can easily apply it.
This sounds like a much worse version of the Wild West game that we did.
Yes. So, looks like... Oh, here we go. Okay. Alright, let's see. This is technically a punch. So, you get them in the gut. The armored gut.
I missed their head by a couple feet.
Yep. And it's brawling, so I actually had to invert those numbers. And let's see, you got less than half of your roll, of your total, less than half of your total stat, which means you do serious damage. Oh no, you do medium damage, but in this case, that's going to be enough. Alright, yeah, you splash hot oil all through the armor, and the skeleton gives a piteous, human-like shriek, backing up as it is caught on fire. It then falls down the staircase, and the armor and bones fall to pieces, clattering and scattering across the ballroom floor.
Is it apparent that there was no one inside?
It is in fact apparent that all that was there was a skeleton and a suit of armor.
Oh, interesting.
Uh-oh.
All throughout the manor, a whistling rises up, like a wind coming through some unseen gap in the masonry. A dark chuckle takes form within this kind of white noise that fills your eardrums. You hear the sounds of branches smacking against the walls. Branches and other things.
Sala, I'm beginning to think this wasn't worth my bar tab.
I'm beginning to think you were right.
There's a slam from the main foyer, which is not too far down the staircases, and the grinding noise of bolts shooting home.
We should probably seek cover.
What are you guys going to do? Where are you going to go?
Our bedrooms are unlocked, and there
As soon as you turn around, the bedroom doors slam shut, and the bolts drive home. You hear laughter echoing.
Okay, there's got to be a window downstairs or something. Let's go down
downstairs.
All right, as you start to go down the staircase, suddenly the steps angle to turn into a smooth slide. I'm going to roll movement for both of you.
This really is a cartoon. I'm glad they didn't make this movie.
Scooby-Doo mystery.
Okay, good news. Sala, you made your check. Bad news, Marion, you didn't. I'm going to roll to see if you take damage. Just gonna improvise an attack here. Fortunately, you are not very much scathed, but you hit the ground prone, and significantly before your ally, who managed to slow his descent. Down at the bottom, as you reach it, you see there is a rotting corpse standing before you, wearing the Edwardian garb of one of the previous owners of the home.
Is the corpse still burning?
No, the fires have gone out in the howling wind.
Damn it.
All the available light now is moonlight through the giant windows. The corpse's hands reach for you, Marion.
Okay, I try to push myself away while yelling, Sala, do something!
Sala, what do you do?
I take my knife and stab at the ghost.
Alright, you roll over your prowess. You miss. The ghost lunges for Marion, but fortunately also misses.
Oh, it's a ghost? I probably shouldn't try to stab a ghost.
You said ghost, but it's like a corpse. It's unclear how real it is, but it doesn't seem to be just like a zombie, because that wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. But yeah, it is a undead supernatural apparition, which is appears more or less solid, which is reaching for you, Marion, and just sort of like you're scrambling one step ahead of it. Sala?
Can I help Marion up?
Yes, you can. What are you guys going to do now that you're standing up? He's now reaching for both of you.
I kick it in the nuts. Or
All right,
anyway, I would hope.
That's a kick. I'll roll. You succeed on your check. And actually, what do you know? You got him in the nuts.
Yeah! Does that do
All
anything?
Right. Yes, it does. Does serious damage in this circumstance. So, yeah, okay. I'm going to say your boot catches
guy
him,
to death.
and he cracks in half up the middle. And withers into dust.
What the hell?
Okay. What was that?
The doors at the end of the hall slam open, and the butler in his nightgown emerges. "What did you do?" he says, approaching fiercely. "What did you do?"
I apparently
Marion, you tell
kicked it really hard and it died.
You've slain one of the members of the household?
Well, former members, but yes. Also,
He-
slain would imply they were living.
He doesn't seem to be listening to you. He looks livid, in fact, and he's staring at the spot where the apparition was. He turns his back to you and says, "This was supposed to be so simple."
Wait, what?
He slowly turns around. "You were both ideal specimens, young, hale, and hearty. Ideal vessels for my family."
Really? I'm 40 and probably overweight.
"You're 40. I'm 300.
Okay, good point.
Oh, so the butler is the guy...
If you will not
who wrote the
succumb to
note.
the spirits of my deceased family, if you will side instead with those poisoned with English blood." He reaches for his side and pulls from his belt a Walther PPK pistol.
I mean, he's Egyptian and I'm American, so... I guess I probably have English blood.
I'm Welsh Egyptian. I got a lot of English blood. But all the same...
The Welsh aren't the English!
Okay, don't
he
tell
said-
him that. He's got a gun.
He said, "I suppose I will have to use more mundane means." And he looks like he's about to fire.
I try to stab at thee with the knife again?
Okay, you're charging for the knife. Josh, what do you do?
I run around the side and try to grab him from behind.
Okay,
Space
now this
means
guy...
no-
Now, this guy is a villain, which means that if you all want to go at the same time, you get to compare your movements. Fortunately, this means Josh gets to go first. So, Josh, I'm going to
Yay.
roll a wrestle check for you, and you may be surprised to learn that wrestling is entirely distinct from punching and kicking.
Of course.
Now, this is a thing where games of this era often had really ass-backwards wrestling mechanics that didn't make any fucking sense. TSR in particular, generally how they work is you roll, and then, depending on, like, if you succeed, you apply a random wrestling effect to the afflicted person.
Oh, wonderful.
That's if you succeed, which we'll determine. So, you first determine... Okay, so first I roll prowess. Hey, success! You got well under your prowess. In fact, that's a very good success. So I determine damage, but it's not actually damage you do. It instead corresponds to a hold you perform. Sorry, there's supposed to be an action table. I'm just trying to find out where it is.
I love how ridiculously complicated this is.
It's not the most intuitive system I've ever played. Not terrible for 1984, it must be. Here we go. Okay, so based on your wrestling result, you grapple. You might recognize this as a synonym of wrestle, but rest
I was
assured it
going
has
to
an
ask.
entirely distinct meaning. And cross-referencing back to the previous chapter... Okay, grapple. Both characters fall to the floor and struggle with each other. Neither character can attack a third person until one of them breaks free by getting the appropriate result from their own wrestling check.
Oh,
So he
boy.
goes next, so he's going to wrestle you back and see if he succeeds. Oh ho ho! He rolls a success on his wrestling check, meaning that he gets a result, but we'll have to find out what it is. Oh, it rolls a different wrestling result next turn. So he may roll grapple, in which case he's still grappling with you, but otherwise he gets some kind of advantage over you.
But I'm still around, so I am trying to stab him in the pile.
Yeah, stab him in the pile.
Well, it's a pile of 2, but I don't want to stab Marion because she'd be very upset with me.
Okay. Oh, you're in luck. He rolled a grapple result. Yes, it's your turn. Well, Sally, you're free to try to stab him. It's not even harder, necessarily.
All right, I do it. I try to stab him.
Okay. Ooh, good hit. Well, actually not that great. You stab him in the left arm. However, since you do well on your stab, that is one actually thing that this game does do, is it does tell you how well you did, like, to a certain degree. And the only problem is this is like a one-size-fits-all system, almost, for determining, like, degrees of success, which I don't think really suits the game well. Or I don't think it really suits many games well. For a pulp game, it might fly. But in any case, Sala, you do serious damage. So effectively, you disable his left arm, which is going to make it harder for him to wrestle.
Cool.
Alright, you know what? I think we can take the rest of this combat as read here. Marion's holding him down, Sala's just, like, stabbing him. And he can't, actually get a shot off until he breaks a grapple, which doesn't seem like it's gonna happen anytime soon. Especially with his injured arm. If you'd like, we could call the adventure there. You stabbed the appropriate old man.
The end! The mystery is resolved. Old man dies. Wait, isn't he already, like... Isn't he immortal? Is he a ghost?
His spirit was re-released into the castle, but presumably a less shitty movie will be made about that happenstance, so...
No, what actually happens is that Sala doesn't come back, and then we go and meet aliens.
Mm-hmm. So we used just about every system that the game has just then. And just about the one thing we did not do was... or the one major thing we didn't do is, this game actually does have a flowchart for chases.
Oh, what?
This whole thing actually sounds really cool.
It is cool in the sense that if you're in 1984 and you're bored with Dungeons & Dragons and you love Indiana Jones, you might want to pick up this game. It's not cool in the sense of, in 1980, they released a game called Top Secret, and it was better than this game in every single way.
Yeah,
fair enough,
it
but
sounds like a cool idea, but really bad implementation.
I don't know. I as somebody who doesn't play a lot of these games, and again, I'm patient zero for no RPG exposure, but like, I really dig the way it tries to systemize all of the tropes of Indiana Jones, like how it separates weapons that kill you, like swords and guns, from any sort of blunt object or punching, which is sort of a brawly, knock people out thing, from chase sequences, which have their own set of rules, to wrestling and grappling, which have their own set of rules, like we're fighting over a gun, which is literally what happened in our little story. I really dig that, because they're all different components of Indiana Jones, and they all get systemized in different ways, and all feel authentic to not real life at all, but and they certainly don't, I don't think, work as an RPG that's open-ended where you can do whatever you want, but as far as like simulating an Indiana Jones movie adventure, I think it works really well.
Historically, the most successful role-playing games have not been reality simulations, they have been genre simulations.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
The most successful general systems, by far, are the ones that can be adapted easily to different genres rather than the ones that simulate like an objective reality to a modestly successful extent. But yes, this is an example of a genre game. The one thing I will say about it is it has a few slight refinements. Like, here's one. It would have actually been very hard for your characters to die. For the most part, what would probably happen would be that your characters would become injured and need to recuperate, and you might even pass out, but death is a really rare circumstance. It requires...
But I was wondering about that.
Factors.
But again, isn't that genre appropriate? Like
exactly.
No one
that's
really
what I'm saying.
Dies. Yeah.
I'm giving as an example. Even mooks, even like goons, tend not to die. Goons tend to. It just like says they fall unconscious, and you're sort of able to determine for yourself whether they're dead or not. Another thing is that goons, when they take serious damage of any kind, they just go down instantly. It doesn't matter, like, with villains, you need to actually, like, kind of stack things up and, like, exceed a certain threshold where, like, basically what happens is you take a wound and then you take, like, you have to roll, like, you take a serious wound to certain locations, you have to roll, like, a strength check to remain conscious. And that's how villains work also. But goons, they just fall unconscious as soon as they take a severe.
See, that's really cool. I really kind of dig that, especially given that I know the reputation of early D&D versions are all about the lethality and torturing players by mass death. It's kind of cool to see a game that around that era that actually takes the opposite approach.
Mm-hmm. And there are some other examples which we may or may not get to, but this is one case where, yes, your characters were not likely to actually die. Although it leaves it possible, and also just leaves it, in effect, the result of pure chance, which I think is a very TSR thing to put into your Indiana Jones role-playing game. Whereas a more modern system like Fate, or Spirit of the Century, which is the pulp, probably the best pulp adventure system, like dedicated pulp adventure system, is Spirit of the Century, has it so that your character literally doesn't die unless it's story appropriate. Otherwise, it's just like, you're assumed to, whenever you lose a combat, or even choose to lose a combat, because it's just not going your way and you want to gain some mechanical advantage for losing on your terms, you're assumed to be captured or unconscious or just out of the fight, not dead.
I really dig that. I mean, there's a role for death in RPGs, but I think there's especially in old D&D kind of an obsession with it, and I think it's really cool to see games mess with a sense of persistence where, like, you can get knocked out of a fight, but it's not because you are dead, and that's really cool.
Well, once again, that was Save vs. Death. We were playing the Indiana Jones role-playing game from 1984. Tune in next time.
I cannot believe I guessed it.
Based on snakes, too.